Hey y'all, it's Sally Loftus with Loftus Partners. We are going to have a live today, and I'm super excited because I'm going to see if I can get my niece, Kristen, on here. This is my first. We're going to see if we can make it work. Is Kristen? Wait, okay, Kristen, are you here? I'm trying to figure out how to make you on here.
Hello.
Hey!
It worked.
Yay! You look great. How are you?
So do you. Thank you. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm happy. We just had the hurricane come through. Of course, we're like 6 hours from the coast, but we just got like a bunch of rain and storms yesterday. So I'm really happy about the sun being out today.
I believe it. Is that Hurricane Debbie?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that went through Florida as well. I saw a lot of
Oh
people worried about
yeah.
flooding.
Was your family okay?
Yeah, they're fine. You guys are all good too?
Yeah. Yeah, we're good. It was just like heavy rains. It really, compared to other hurricanes we've had in the past, it was,
Not bad.
not that bad.
That's
Not that bad. And yeah, I'm just excited for the sun. So, welcome everyone. I've got my niece Kristen here. She was one of the editors of my book and also creator of this amazing image on the back, the
My little
the
cheeky face.
pig. Yes, we'll call it. Kristen is joining. I'm assuming you're in Los Angeles.
I'm in Los Angeles.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I was like, I never know. Y'all travel.
Yeah, true.
Like, who knows? Don't you wish you were in France again right now for the Olympics?
Oh, we were earlier this month, but yeah, France is super cool. We watched the opening ceremony because we had like been around to all those places before, and it was really cool to see it on the TV. Like we were there, we saw that, like, and then see it kind of play out for the opening ceremony. It was cool.
Yeah, the opening ceremony I loved, and I was having such ADHD moments because I was like, we're looking there and we're looking there, and I was just like,
There was a lot. I was like, is it normally this theatrical? Because I couldn't remember past ceremonies, and everyone was like, I don't think
I
so.
know.
So they really went all out.
Well, and I feel like the camera angles, like I just wanted to watch the people dance in the water,
Yeah.
like that one whole thing. But it was just like, anyways. But I literally was just before I got on with you when we were texting, was watching the breaking qualifying
Oh,
the
cool.
B girls. So I have like been totally Olympics obsessed,
Nice.
and yeah, and anyway, U.S. women's basketball is playing right now, and go USA. But yeah, I was just listening to a podcast this morning. Of course, it's from the Daily New York Times podcast is about how breaking got into the Olympics.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, which is super interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was just like, so after this, I will be going back to watching
Watch
breaking.
more of that.
Uh, yeah, yeah, and I will be very sad beyond like I have a child moving back this weekend, but also the Olympics will be ending. So double sadness.
Yes.
I don't know what I will do. So, anyways, well, I'm so excited to talk to you. And I am excited to share with everybody. So, Pay Equity Book Club, we've been working kind of through this book on Fridays, and we're in chapter 3. And so, the last few weeks, I kind of did an introduction, then talked about the history of pay equity. Last week, talked about equal pay and some of the Olympic athletes that go with that. And Kristen is a sports lover
Yes,
too. So
absolutely.
we've talked about soccer. We love soccer. And oh, Liverpool. Oh my God.
I know. My brother got it for me. He's a big fan, but I thought you'd appreciate the
Oh,
sports.
yes. Yes, I do. I will say during the first half of the women's game, was it Tuesday when they played? I was
Hmm.
feeling confident enough to purchase a whole USA bundle of like, a little thing like glasses,
Yes.
tattoos. So I will be ready for
Full
the game.
supporter.
Yeah, I'm full on support for them. And I love Marta, so it's
Mhm.
very bittersweet.
Yeah.
But this week is going into kind of there's 4 phases of pay equity, and it's preparation, assessment, leadership buy-in, and implementation. And so in preparation, and I was like, I just covered up my notes, kind of the steps within that, and this is in chapter 3, is getting employee feedback, looking at the cost of living for where people are, what employees must do to work for you. So kind of some of those life situations, which we're going to talk about today. And review the job structure quality. So what is it you're wanting people to do? And just FYI, I'm going to be doing something about AI and HR in the fall. So, and kind of how you can restructure jobs around that. And then kind of starting leadership conversations. So before we kind of get into this, I would love for Kristen, if you don't mind, to introduce yourself in a way that feels comfortable to my audience, which live, and this will post on my Instagram and on YouTube. So,
Oh, good to know. Yes. Hi, I'm Kristen. I am a designer and illustrator. I'm currently based in Los Angeles, but we're actually moving to Florida, to like the Tampa area, St. Pete area, at the end of the month. And so that'll be a big move, and we're really excited about that. But I work currently, I'm freelancing as a designer and illustrator. I work a lot in children's books. I work a lot with education and making content for education-based companies, and a lot with startups, which is really fun because that can vary across industries, and so it kind of mixes it up. But that's kind of a little bit about me and what I'm doing for work. I live in Los Angeles and will be moving to Florida with my husband Alec, which is Sally's nephew, and our cat Stella, our little tuxedo cat. So that's the whole group.
ooh, that's going to be a long drive with Stella.
I know. Oh, we're flying. We're not driving
Oh,
the car.
okay. I was like, wow. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, she will just kind of she's been on planes before for other
Okay.
moves, but she doesn't love them. So we'll just have to kind of go through it. But she'll be all right.
Yeah. Yes. If only we could fly with Rocky across. Like we keep trying to think about, like, we want to go to the World Cup games on the West Coast in
Oh,
2026.
oh, that would be
I'm like,
amazing.
maybe by then, Brett, we'll be able to afford and or somehow get Rocky out there with us so
Yeah,
we can fly. So I
absolutely.
would have, I
Stop.
would
He's
have like
bigger.
reserve a RV and kind of drive down the coast.
That'd be fun.
Um, yeah, but I'm like, Rocky's gonna have to make that trip. So um,
Hmm.
there is something called Bark Air, but it's a little expensive. So
Oh, that's good.
yeah, they only go from, like, I think it's between New York and Los Angeles maybe or something. But yeah, anyways, if you ever want to just go down a black hole, look up Bark Air on the internet. Anyways, well, great. Well, like I said, Kristen was one of my editors for the book. Super excited to have her here today. And what I thought we would do is just kind of talk about, I wanted to kind of model for y'all some of the questions that are you can access through the free Pay Equity Collective, that I use with employee feedback sessions. Because like I say, pay equity work starts and ends with employees. And if you don't have their voices involved, don't have their voices documented, it's not going to work. And so these are just some questions. These are actually questions I created for my thesis when I did in graduate school about pay equity. And so I thought Kristen and I could just kind of go back and forth and give our answers on these questions, just to give y'all kind of an idea of the flow. And Kristen and I are kind of in different life situations too. I always hate to say generations because I feel like people poo-poo on generation stuff, and are like, oh, the younger people, blah, blah, blah. That I can't stand. So we'll just say we're in different life situations, but we are different ages too.
Yeah.
So kind of the first question I always ask people is, how do you know you're being paid enough? So I'm curious, Kristen, kind of how do you answer that?
Yeah, it can be tough because it's hard to know, right? It can vary so much, depending on the companies, depending on the role that you're in and everything. But I think a general guidepost is kind of if you can live comfortably, like you talk a lot about in the book, first like based on cost of living where you're at,
Mhm.
and then also have a little bit of cushion to be able to save as well, not just cover your basic expenses, but also kind of have something on the side to be saving up and feel comfortable in that way. That's kind of a good way to start. And then I think I've been lucky, or I've been at least benefited from in the past few years. There's been a big movement in the creative industry to be more transparent about how people are getting paid and what people are earning. So that's been nice because you can kind of pull from your community to at least kind of point you in the right direction and then do what feels best for you from there. Because it's not all, just black and white. It can vary, especially if you're freelancing like job to job.
Mhm.
But I think having like those kind of community guideposts and then check in with, your cost of living where you're at, how much you're liking the job, how many hours you're having to put in for everything, can all
Mhm.
be a way to evaluate it. I know, I feel like my big learning curve with that was moving a few years ago, or quite a few years ago now, from Tallahassee to Boston. Because in
Yeah.
Tallahassee, the cost of living can be quite low compared to other areas in
Mhm.
Florida. But then moving to Boston, it's much more expensive. And I just feel like I had no concept of it at the time. So I took a job that was almost the same pay I was making in Tallahassee. And I was struggling when I first got there. And I couldn't stay for very long, which is something you kind of cover in the book. It's like, how do you account for like employee retention and making sure people are happy enough to stay with you so you keep talent. And I couldn't really stay in the job for very long and I had to move on because of that. So I think then moving from Boston to Los Angeles, I had a better sense of it. And now we're kind of reevaluating that again now that we're moving back to Florida. Cost of living is going to be very different there. I think we were hoping it was going to be lower, but we're learning that a lot of people have been moving to Florida lately, so it's been driving up costs. So we're going to have to kind of see when we get there how different it actually is and how much that will impact kind of what we're hoping to get for earnings.
Yeah, that's interesting. Kind of hearing you talk about that makes me think. So I grew up in Tennessee where we didn't have state income tax. And then when I graduated college, I moved to Florida that doesn't have state income tax, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then moved to North Carolina, so that was like the first time I'd ever lived in a place that had state income tax and didn't really, I mean, I got a good bump when I moved, but it was like a new thing I had to factor. And like for you, I think about in Florida, like I hear a lot of people like, a lot of houses can't get insured, because of the hurricanes. So I'm sure housing is just like a mess
Yeah.
in Florida.
Yeah. Housing is the thing I think that has been the most unexpected, probably. Like when we were considering moving back and seeing that it wasn't as different as we thought it was going to be. I think there's other factors that will be pretty different, but that one I know has gotten a lot higher. So it is interesting.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, I'm curious. So, kind of like in your life stage, what benefit, like if you were going to take it, because I know you're doing freelancing now, I don't know kind of what your future plans are, but like what would you say kind of the benefits that are most important for you at this certain life stage?
hmm So in this life stage, I think with everything going on in our lives and wanting to move, and we've been planning to move for a while, the flexibility and the remote aspect has been really nice because then we don't have to worry about giving up our income in order to make the move we want to move. We want to move to be closer to family, not for any particular like job or anything like that. And so if we weren't able to be flexible and remote, we would potentially have to give up a job to move or not be able to move closer to family if we couldn't find something. So having that
Mm-hmm.
flexibility has kind of provided us with the opportunity to live where we want to live, which is really nice, and get back to be closer to our family.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a big factor in that has been being able to, like, we're a dual income household, so Alec has health insurance, he has certain benefits that I can be on, dental insurance, things like that. And if he didn't have that, I think it would be a harder decision to opt for the flexibility because as a freelancer, I don't have those benefits. And so I think if we move and things change, those are the kinds of things I'll probably be looking for in a full-time position. I know
Mm-hmm.
one thing I definitely miss is like paid time off. Like if you take off time as a freelancer, you don't get paid. So you're kind of like,
Yeah.
all right, well, I have to evaluate, doing that if you want to go on a trip or just take a day if you're sick. Things like that, I think I definitely valued in full-time roles and would be looking for again.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it would be different depending on, and then we don't have dependents right now. So I think that helps too. We don't need as many of the benefits. We can kind of take the minimum health benefits for younger. That's not as much on our radar as it might be at a different stage.
Yeah, that's a great. I appreciate you sharing that because it's like different life stages. I was talking to somebody who works locally here yesterday. She was talking about how she was a waitress for 30 years and then moved over to a local nonprofit to start working. It was like, basically I had very little going into Social Security because waitresses, they make like 250 an hour, whatever. And then
Yeah.
talking about how much her retirement has grown since going to this organization that matches,
hmm
right? And that's like really important for her. And like for me now, kind of in the stage where like in the past, obviously healthcare has been huge when we've had smaller children. Like I always use dependent care accounts, medical, health savings accounts, any way to kind of reduce expenses because it was so freaking expensive. And things like that. So in a flexible schedule, absolutely. Is in the ability to kind of, like you said, take time off in a way that you don't, one is you feel like the work is covered, which is, freelance is different, kind of same here with consulting. And two, that you don't, I find in a lot of organizations, people will have like unlimited PTO or things like that, but they don't have a culture that supports that. So people don't want to take the time off because they know how slammed they're going to be when they get back. And it's not worth like the week off, to kind of
Yeah.
leave, which then, creates a whole cycle.
Mhm.
So, okay, well, that's helpful. Well, tell me, like, kind of whenever you're like, what are the things that you look for? Like whenever you're looking for a job, like kind of, are there places you look? Are there, um, I don't know, like things you're particularly looking for, things like that?
Sorry, you cut out a little bit on, I think it's my Wi-Fi is being a little
That's
weird. Would you mind repeating the
okay.
question?
Yeah, you're good. You're good. I'm just talking about like when you look for a job, what are you kind of looking at for? Like, are there certain places you look or things like language you're looking for in a job? Like for me, I will say if I'm looking at jobs, like if they don't post the salary range, I'm not going to look at
Okay, yeah, yeah, that's helpful. Yeah, I know, and I think in California they have been a lot better about that. They passed something where they're supposed to share it now, which
it.
is different. If you look in Florida, I don't think that's a requirement,
Yeah.
so
Right.
it's more of a variety. I do appreciate when people post it though, because it is like the interview process, and I think it's only gotten longer in recent years. There's been like a huge, a lot more people are applying than there are jobs available right now, I think is what it seems like. And so it's a really hard process to go through interviewing and all that stuff. And if you don't even know the salary range, it's a big chunk of your time, which is very frustrating, not just for you, but for the employer, because if you're not going to be aligned, then it's wasting their time too. So I definitely appreciate when people share that, or at least have some transparency around it ahead of time. So you're kind of aligned or at least on the right track. So things like that are definitely really helpful. I definitely look for um, some of the benefits that we talked about earlier, like having the flexibility for paid time off or remote work. I definitely prefer working remote. I think it helps me with like my work-life balance and keeping everything organized, and on top of it, and just provides us that flexibility to be where we want to be. But then on top of that, I definitely look for other things that aren't as directly, like something you couldn't necessarily list, like how the team's going to be, how you might work together, the community around that. Are you going to feel supported if you take time off and come back the week later,
Mhm.
or are you going to be slammed because no one was supporting you while you were gone? Things like that are the kind of big value adds that you can't necessarily list on LinkedIn, but make a big difference in your quality of job. And like if you're enjoying what you're doing and who you're working with and if they're uplifting you and things like that.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was just thinking about, I want to share this with people of like, a lot of people are like, oh, all these young people want to, be remote, blah, 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 and complain about it. And I'm like, y'all, I have definitely seen Kristen and Alec both like work so many hours, like while they're traveling, on family like that. They're like, okay, we have to go in the room and we got to work for like 10 hours. So it is great because then you can't, like for y'all, like even the like being able to take a cheaper flight because you can
Yeah,
go in or things like that, then you can work remotely. And just that little bit, like kind of gives
mm-hmm.
you financial capability and some flexibility with, more time with family,
Exactly.
things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know it kind of 20 minutes goes by fast. I was too busy talking about the Olympics. Uh, so, Kristen, just you've been in this book, read it and everything. I'm curious, kind of, what are some things that you learned or stood out to you in the book?
Yeah, I was thinking about that this morning. I really liked. I was re-looking at chapter 2 actually, and thinking about how you brought up, the pay differences and pay inequality between like the women's soccer team was like the example you gave, and the men's soccer team. And I've heard that story before. I feel like that's always been like a big one when you're talking about like equal pay between like genders and stuff like that. But I really liked how you got into more factors that go into that. It's not just necessarily about it being exactly equal pay. It's like all of the different things that go
Mhm.
into what makes it fair, what makes it equal, and kind of learning more of that. Holistic thinking, I think, was really interesting and cool because I feel like on its face, you're just like, yeah, pay people the same. But it's like, is that really the solution, or do we need to be thinking about all these other things, which I thought was really cool. So that was probably one of the more interesting parts to me, along with all just like the data you provide. All the numbers are like super helpful, super interesting. I always love the anecdotes throughout the book where you're sharing a piece of life and you're like, and I recognize some of the names you were using in some of the side stories and stuff like that, which was fun. So that kind of stuff makes the information just a lot easier to absorb and retain when it's told in that way. So I appreciated that as well.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot I will say for everybody. I have posted, like I just posted on LinkedIn today, a story about Sha'Carri Richardson in the Olympics. There's so many great, like I feel like women have just dominated the Olympics finally.
Yes, absolutely.
First Olympics where we've had gender equality, at least if you measure by male and female, not other genders. But you know, yeah, I mean, there's so many stories about things that women, you know, extra hurdles, not literal, but you know, extra things that we, you know, we have to overcome to get to these spaces. So thank you for pointing that out. Well, thank you, Kristen, for joining. I want to give you the opportunities to share with people. Like, Kristen is amazing. Highly recommend her.
Thank
So
you.
talented. She's so easy to work with. She's like super easygoing. So what are some ways that people can contact you if they're interested in seeking your help as a designer?
Yeah, the easiest way is just going to KristenBritton.com, KristenBrittain. A lot of people think it's like the country, but there's an extra T. Would be the best way. And you can find my email, my Instagram, and all that through there. So that's probably the easiest way to locate me. But yeah, thank you so much. I love joining today. I love chatting with you. I always love chatting with you, but it was fun to do it on Instagram and talk about your book. It's really awesome. So I definitely hope a lot of people check it out and check out the book club and keep logging in.
Oh, thank you, Kristen. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, everybody. Next week, we will be talking about the next piece, which is the pay equity assessment. So join us next Friday and contact Kristen for all your needs. And thanks for joining today. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.